Hello, everybody. Nice to see you again. Today, we want to talk with you about fear and our personal experiences, and to put like a seed in your brain to think how is it the fear for you, Andrea? How would you describe fearful moments, or what does fear do to yourself?
Well, fear for me is a used to be a very abstract thing. I was always thought of myself as very brave and very courageous, which meant I gave myself very little time to feel fear. I remember I was a very shy little girl, and always when my grandmother would push me to do new things like knock on a door I haven't done before, I would start effectively trembling. So there was this really bad feeling inside of me, a really nasty crawling sensation. It involved my stomach. It make my heart tremble. It was like you know ants crawling on your skin, and it would block my throat, so my voice would go away, and I felt very very hot, and all
But
that.
why? Just tell me, why would you knock on another door? What was the point? It was a stranger?
No, it was like my grandmother would always push me to do new things, and
Okay.
sometimes I didn't want to, and I was afraid to go. I didn't want to. I was not. It was not shame because I had a different sensation for shame as I was fear. Why should I go first and ask that person something? And my grandmother used to say, if you don't try, if you don't ask, you will never get it.
Hmm.
But it
Okay.
was per- um, along the way, it's starting from being several minutes to several seconds, but it was there and I pushed through it. So I forced myself to just get it over with. I experienced the same thing when I um, um, got on a car the first time driving. The
Hmm.
driving the first time was a very scary
So
experience.
you remember the same episode like in your childhood, the
Yes,
same
and
kind
it
of
came
feelings.
back. And it came back. So
Wow.
that is fear for me. It's actually a physical sensation. And I remember it comes actually like a hot wave inside and all these nasty feelings that you really want to stop. You don't want to go there. You don't want to feel that. You want to step back and get out of the situation. I remember one episode. I was rock climbing in Greece, and we were on top of a waterfall, and we had some ropes, and for some weird reason, they were placed in a in an awkward way. So the guides decided that we would jump in the water, and it was very high. So and it was supposed to be with the jump because the rock was very uh, it had a belly, so you had to run, jump, and jump over
Mhm.
it to jump into the water. It was so I stayed and I froze. It was actually fear of dying. So like that feeling magnified like 1,000 times, and I couldn't move. I started crying immediately. I usually, if for people who know me, I don't cry very easily, but I was completely blocked. I couldn't move. I was completely frozen, and tears were on my face, and I just wanted everybody to leave me alone. I would go back and not be there. So the guides and the other people around me spent like 25 minutes, 30 minutes convincing me to jump. And it was very, very scary. So for me, that is fear. That is actual fear. So I experienced different degrees, but until I was high up on that rock, I could not tell you exactly what fear was, but now I can describe it. It was that.
Yeah.
So for me, fear is physical mostly. So I recognize the feeling. Uh, I've learned to locate it in my body. So it usually involves part of my belly and it goes upwards to my neck. That with the waterfall and the jump was the only time ever when I felt completely paralyzed. So now I've learned more and I've learned that the reptilian brain, so one of our primitive brains, took over and said, danger, stop, you're going to die. It was completely out of my control. It's a very scary experience. And it has repercussions because I dreamed about that. So I remember that. So it changed me in a deep, fundamental way. The good thing is that I jumped.
In the
I
end,
don't, in
well
the
done
end, I
you.
jumped. Yeah. And I don't think I would ever do it again. So it didn't, when you have that sense of triumph, you did something that was very fearful. It didn't happen to me. I was just very, very relieved. It was over. And that's the feeling I remember the most.
Yeah, but
The
it was a peer pressure, wasn't it?
It was, but it was also encouragement. It was support. We were 3/4 of the way to where we were supposed to go. So going back was not exactly an option. Going down the ropes, on the other hand, was an option. But everybody else did it, so I said, why not? I tried. Was very, very, very difficult for me. And I felt really proud that I did it, but most of it I remember being relieved. And I can very much uh, um, see how some people would never have done it. I
Well,
mean,
especially if at the end they had a bad experience. I mean, I know about people jumping off cliffs and actually having their back broken, or you have other things happening. So for them, or they are. I remember for me, when I was taught how to swim, which is kind of a thing in Romania because now we both live in UK. One of way of teaching us how to swim is to just take you and put you in the water, but not put you, actually push you in the water after you've
probably.
only done one or two lessons. So I still remember that feeling of going down in the water until the end of the floor, feeling the floor, and then trying to go up, and you have all this water which comes through your mouth, through your nose, and you cannot breathe, and you're like, and it was so traumatic that it took me, I think, 1 or 2 more years after to even think about learning how to swim, which my parents always encouraged me, although my mother doesn't know how to swim, my father does, so he was always into sport. And then I've only done it with support and in a lake, a salty lake that maintains you on the surface. So anybody can kind of start learning.
Yeah, it's a really strange experience here, and it teaches you about helplessness. I think it's dangerous. It's also so this kind of experiences with water, with jumping, with things that actually put you in danger, they activate that reptilian brain we talked about. So it's the primitive part of our brains that takes over. And then there are three basic reactions. There are more, but we're talking about the basic ones is fight, flight, and freeze.
And fawn now. We also know the other one.
And
You said the
also
basic three, but
yeah.
it's also
Yeah,
fawn um, and there is a
but
fifth one somebody discovered. She is called the Julia Di Gangi, which if you have question, ask us in the comments and I will tell you about what she's saying. It's quite interesting. But yeah, going back to this.
yeah, so it's I experienced freeze a lot of times. If we think about it, I think many of you going back and going in your memory, you have experienced fear and all three reactions in different degrees in your life. And I think it's a good exercise that to go back and reflect on when you felt actual fear, because right now, so if we don't, okay, driving and stuff, if we don't jump off bridges or waterfalls, and we don't swim in, we're not adrenaline junkies, and we don't do any extreme sports, the dangers we're in are a little bit less.
Yeah, but let's come back to the present time now. When would you say you have or feel fear at work, or when did you feel at work after you became, an adult and
Well,
time passed? Well, did you have episodes? Well, not traumatic like that. I can't imagine it can be the same, but did you have something similar?
well, there is hazing hazing that is done in the army, and some workplaces do it when an initiation ritual that usually involves some drinking or some shaming or some. So there are people who pass through that. Unfortunately, there are still today. For me, um, it's fear mixed with excitement at work. But it's also fear when somebody scolds you. So it's how do I know it's fear? It elicits the same physical sensation in
Reaction.
the body.
Mm.
Yeah. So I still feel that, and I still feel, it's like holding your breath. You wait for something to happen and you hold your breath because you're reacting to somebody. And when there is anger in the room, so when you are, and you feel it as well. So what happens, for instance, have you ever gone to a meeting where people are fighting?
Yeah,
And
of
the
course.
first thing that hits
Cousins.
you is the aggression and your bodily reaction, because there is aggression in the air, is fear.
Yeah, and you kind of stay aside and look at them and you think, oh, well, depending what state you are, can I help or can I not? Should I let them finish the fight? But you are right. I am thinking now it creates such a interesting atmosphere around them, those two people.
Yeah, I remember I was in a job, and we had a team leader who was very prone to screaming. So she would get very upset and she would scream. And we had one of the seniors in the team who would fight with her. So, every day almost, they would fight. So they would scream at each other in the middle of the open space.
Every
And
day.
I remember first my reaction was exactly that, and fear, and then so that's the automatic reaction. And then I would get a hold of myself and said, okay, these two people are crazy and let's get out of this because we don't want to get involved or whatever. So you make a decision. But I was watching my colleagues, so the expression on their faces, first one was fear, because it brings up your childhood. The moment you actually saw your parents fighting and you didn't understand what was going on, it's immediate. And many times we're not aware of it, we don't know.
No,
So
because you kind of shake it off. You kind of tell yourself, okay, it's not about me. So then, okay, I'm not in that story. Well, if you can, some people can get
some
triggered.
people go out and cry. Some people are very, very affected and traumatized and stressed, and they develop all sorts of diseases. That's why the environment at work is so very important, because even if only two people fight, everybody in that room was affected in different ways according to their respective experiences. But for me, I remember the first reaction was fear. Okay, now what? It's a fear of, okay, what's going to come next? It's also a fear. If there were two men, I would have probably feared a little bit for my life, just because you never know if they might actually start fighting. There were two women, but they were so loud. It was a very, it created anxiety. It
Sounds
created
very, very professional, and it sounds like none of them could stop, by the way.
and none of them did stop. And
So it
uh,
was it was a manager shouting at the report, or they were the
yeah,
same level?
no. There was a manager and senior position, and they didn't agree on things. And I thought, first, it was very unprofessional, but that's kind of the last thing on my mind right now, right then, because unprofessional is like, okay, these people are crazy. What am I doing here? What kind of team is this? How can I
Mm.
continue working? And then day after day, it had a cumulative effect,
Yeah,
because
it's taking pieces out of you because you start
yeah,
to not trust the, I don't know,
if you
even the team, even the company, because nobody intervenes, nothing happens, nothing
yeah,
improves.
and then before going to work, I remember thinking, okay, what's going to happen today? Are they going to fight? And you had that feeling of, contraction If they're going to fight, I'm going to defend. And then you go again in that position. Almost it's not exactly fetal position, but you bring
No, but
yourself.
it's exactly when you are small and you don't know if the parent will fight or if they are going to tell you off or they are not going to tell you off, if you're going to be punished or you're not going to be punished, and it's uncertainty. And I think, well, it's amazing. I know about places like that. I didn't have the bad luck to be in one of them, but I heard about some of them happening after I left. And my question was always, what did you do? What if somebody's telling you off directly? What's your, if like a manager come to scream at me, I will be totally shocked because it's an experience that I never had. So I don't know what it means. But I think what I learned in all the companies that I worked for, nobody can beat you. It's not, well, not in the countries we are living, right? So physical aggression is not going to happen. They cannot fire you as easy as they think. And even if they fire you, I find another job. So what I keep telling myself, at the end of the day, you're not going to die there in that company, and there are others. But that's logical from another brain, from the third brain, right? We know where you get there. The first reaction, and this is an extreme when people are fighting. I had some guys in my team who came and they said they want to beat each other. That was fun because they didn't like us, well, not at work. So, and let's try to find another way of communicating, because as we know, most of us, when they are fighting, there are two children fighting there. They are not the mature, the adult, the individual. So clearly they both come from different perspective that they will need to solve. And unfortunately, I think most of the companies are not equipping manager. That's what I was asking, was the relationship a superior to scream to somebody who is reporting into them? That's already bad. It's not about the other one. You should set the tone. If this is the tone you're setting, then that can become a norm, and other people can scream at their colleague, at their peer or other manager, because nobody intervened, nothing is happening there. So what is the problem? What is the norm? There is no norm, right?
Well, yeah, but that's a larger discussion. We started about talking about fear because it's a natural response. And fear comes in to protect you. Fear comes in to say something is wrong. And then it kind of leaves you out there. If your primitive brain takes over, you have these opinions, these reactions, depending how on your experience, on how you're built, depending on your what happened to you before and how many times. And we all are different in different times of our life. But it's very interesting to know that we have this reaction of fear, even if we see something fighting on the street. Of course, at work, it's bad, but it does happen, and it happens. Okay, the extreme situation happening in broad daylight, but what happens behind closed doors? And sometimes a bad word, a critic, a judgment can do as much harm as physical aggression.
Yeah,
We
I
all
agree.
react differently because we are prompted to fear depending on our experience. As you never know, because sometimes it's like, leave me alone. You have a bad moment, it can happen, and somebody comes and asks you for a pen and you say, leave me alone, and everybody's like, oh, what
Yeah, it's
what
a build up. It's not that person who did
Yeah,
that. And there is a
so
saying, I was remembering when you were saying that it doesn't, it's not so important what you said. It's most important. People will remember how you made them feel. That's the saying. People will remember how you make them feel, not what you said. So
yeah,
it's
and
not the feeling, it's not the word that you said because you're trying to convey a message to them. It's actually, I feel like shit. And
yeah,
that sensation goes into your body and it finds a place where it starts to stay, and then other things will happen and you allow it because most of us don't have tools to know what do we do with this sensation, this horrible thing that goes inside. Do you know
yeah, and
how to
yeah,
detach?
it's a
Do you
big
know how to work on them? Do you know how to stay with the fear?
And fear, it's a really nasty feeling. It's really, so for me, the first thing in everything is me wanting to get out of it. Stop this feeling. I don't like to feel it.
I think
It's
this is the fear. It depends how you think of fear. Fear, as we know, it's a tool to help you also be careful, especially for children, things not to happen to you, right? So it's protecting you of not to get electrocuted, not to get burned, not to, to breathe when you, when you don't have enough oxygen or something. So I think these are kind of a healthy fear. And there is also, I think, a fear you want to try something new and you're a little scared and you have a little fear. Maybe it will work or maybe it will not, right? That's another kind of fear. So I think it's very important not to put it as the bad guy who can, destroy. I think it's a large spectrum of fear.
Yeah. And what we call fear is learned fear, because we learn when we are born, we're not afraid, which is not exactly a good thing because we are very small and helpless and can get into a lot of dangerous situations. So we learn fear through our parents because they say don't. We put our hands on the stove, is hot, we burn, we fall, we hurt, and so on. So it's learned. So our nervous system learns to fear uh, new things. And this is the fear we introduce into newness, into new situation. So it's a bit different, but we can continue the discussion later. All I wanted to point out is fear is not easy. It's a big feeling. It sometimes goes throughout the body, and it could paralyze you potentially. So that's not only in life-threatening situation, because that feeling comes and goes, and then you use it a lot during your lifetime. And then when somebody screams at you, you behave like I did when I was on top of that waterfall. And the situation I quite different, but the reaction it might still be the same depending on experience. But let's talk about this in next episode, because we want to talk more about fear. Yeah, not that we like it, but let's see how we deal with it. See you
Yes,
next.
so watch us in the next episode of that, talking still about fear. See you. Bye.